Hi everybody, I'm Tony Lyons, senior compositor at Trickster Studios in Munich, Germany. I'm originally from the USA and I've traveled around a bit and have over 10 years of compositing experience. Some of you might know me from my green screen keying tutorials on my Compositing Mentor website and YouTube channel. I'm also the curator of the Nuke Survival Toolkit that we're going to be going over. So yeah, happy to be here. Thanks, guys. Hello everyone, and welcome to this webinar. I'm Tony Lyons, and I'm going to be showing you the Nuke Survival Toolkit. And the first thing we're going to do is show you an introduction video for those of you who don't know what the Nuke Survival Toolkit is. And after that, we'll jump into some of the tools that are located in the Nuke Survival Toolkit, and we'll be seeing how they can help you overcome some of the challenges that we face every day in compositing. So without further ado, here is the introduction video. Hi, I'm Tony Lyons, and in this video I'm going to be giving a brief introduction to the Nuke Survival Toolkit. The Nuke Survival Toolkit is a portable tool menu for the Foundry's Nuke with a hand-picked selection of Nuke gizmos collected from all over the web, organized into one easy-to-install toolbar. Along with having hundreds of tools from some of the best Nuke artists in the world at your fingertips, the Nuke Survival Toolkit also seeks to answer three important questions. Where does the gizmo come from? Who made the gizmo? And what does the gizmo do? To try to answer these questions, the Nuke Survival Toolkit comes with full documentation for every tool in the menus. To bring up the documentation PDF, just click on the documentation info icon at the top of the menu. There's over 280 pages with helpful images, credits, descriptions, and external links to help you better understand each tool. To help in searching for the tool, in the beginning of the document there is an index that is laid out in the exact order that appears in the tool menu. Of course, you can also press the Ctrl or Command F key for the search feature and type in the name of the tool that you're looking for. Alright, so before we start demonstrating tools, let me make it abundantly clear that most of these tools were not created by me. I've just gathered them and curated a list of tools that I feel every compositor should have access to in their toolbox while compositing. Many of the tools have demo videos of their own, which are probably far better than anything I'm going to show here now, and I really encourage that you go to the artist websites or Nukepedia pages, which can be found in the documentation, and give them a read through, give them support, comments, feedback if you like their tools. So my main goal here is to perhaps shed some light on some tools that you may or may not have heard about yet, and briefly demonstrate them and go through why I think that they're great to have with you in your toolbox. These are just a few of the tools in the menu. There's no way to get through them all now, so I'm just going to skip around a bit and try to avoid some of the more obvious tools like iBlur and iTransform that we all probably know and love, and maybe introduce some of the lesser known tools in the toolbox. But trust me, iBlur and iTransform are in there too, so let's get started. The first tool I want to show you is Voronoi Gradient. By default it makes a few points that are transitioning into each other, but you can actually click it to sample from the input, which means that these points are grabbing from the input color. So you can start adding more points, and I'm pretty sure you can add as many points as you like, and it's going to grab the input color from the position of each point. And so yeah, you can make a smooth transitional gradient between all the points, and the more points you add, the more detail you have. And so we have now a nice sky ramp without the clouds. And what you could do, for example, with this image is you could pop these clouds out by making a difference matte of the clouds versus a luma key, because the luma key might have the gradient. So if you divide the sky by the gradient you've just made, you can sort of desaturate the image and then make this nice key of the clouds. Another practical example of what you could do with the Voronoi gradient is to make a gradient for a blue screen or green screen. And if you have the right amount of points and it's a smooth enough gradient, like in this shot for instance, you can create a blue screen, and the only difference then would be sort of the reflections on the glass. So it can be a kind of a way to preserve and key some of those reflections or fine details that you might not otherwise be able to get with the IBK color gizmo, because it's sort of keeping the details in the clean plate. So you can see here the difference between the two. Another very similar tool is the Grad magic tool, and this is just a 4-point gradient that is live sampling from the plate. And once you plug in the input, you can see it's sampling around, and we can use it to cover up that lamp or picture on the wall. So you have the ability to bake the current frame or bake a frame range, and you can also attach a corner pin and blur the edge there, so it's a nice smooth transition. And if I go ahead and bake the frame range here, oh, I've accidentally grabbed the bottom salmon color there, but that's okay. So you can see it's just really quick and easy to use for those times you need to make a quick patch. So let's bring in the Noise Advanced and Cell Noise tools. These are really good tools for like look dev and R&D and concept work, trying to find the look of a shot and explore some features. Now the Cell Noise tool has, it's a blink script tool with a bunch of different types of noise. You can see it has size and Z evolution in all of these. And you can really explore some different type of noise that don't come default in Nuke right away. So it helps you explore different patterns. For example, maybe you can use this swirly to make like a lizard skin or something like that. The Noise Advanced is a more standard noise, so it's using the noise that comes with Nuke. But it's basically used for animating the noise with some easy sliders like speed of Z, so you can make the evolution of the noise. And so we can get some cool patterns right away, really easy sliders here. So you don't have to remember any expressions or anything. And you can also translate pretty much anything like speed of Y and speed of X. So you can have it kind of moving off to the side for you to help with distortions or whatever. And so, yeah, that's basically Noise Advanced. The next tool in the draw menu I'm going to show you is X-Tesla, and it's really great for making lightning effects. And it comes pre-animated right out of the box, so you set your in and out point for a little bit of direction, and you can change the amount of branches, the length of the arcs, and a lot of random settings to give it a really unique look, as well as a quality preview, so you can make things go a little faster while you're playing around. And it's got like a glow and color options already there installed, and so there it is animating. You can also change the kind of smoothness of the branches to get a kind of unique look. Another great tool is the spot flare, and this is mimicking a light shining into the camera and giving off a flare, which you can kind of animate some shimmering rays coming off of, and it's got really nice glow and really natural looking fall off. The next tool we have is Gradient Editor, and it allows you to create a ramp with a lot of different custom colors that you can add and replace, and it's very easy to manipulate. Each point has saturation and hue and luminance controls. You can control the repetition of the pattern within the 0 to 1 ramp, as well as the evolution within the 0 to 1 ramp, so you can kind of make it spinning. You can change the smoothness between the points and the interpolation. It comes with a lot of presets, which you can select and even save your own. You can plug in an input image and actually use the 0 to 1 luminance of the input as a kind of way to tone map your image with your own custom ramp. Another tool in the draw menu is Silk, which takes an input image, in this case a roto paint node with a bunch of lines drawn, and it develops these patterns and kind of moire effects between them, which you can change the number of streaks in size and softness and color. You can go through the different algorithms that are preset, and it kind of develops all these different abstract patterns, so you can kind of go through them and find the one that you like. You can change the colors, and it's kind of got this color ramp going on in it. It also respects like a moving input, so you can plug in, for example, a caustic-like noise, and you can see that it's going to be moving along with the noise pattern. You can plug Silk into basically any image and create these really cool abstract-looking images that could help you with your concept or whatever look that you're after. Another tool in the draw menu is Perspective Guide, which can give you a visualization of the perspective lines for your image. You can set the origin or the horizon line point there and start moving the other points around to line up the perspective. You can also duplicate the node and get a 2-point perspective by placing another point on the horizon line, and that'll help you with some DMP work or lining things up to the plate. Another great tool for regraining your plate is DOS Grain, and in order for DOS Grain to work properly, you'll need your original plate as well as a degrained version of your plate. And when you click the Analyze button, it actually generates a response curve that tells DOS Grain how strongly to apply the grain depending on the luminance of the comp input. And we can be a little bit clever about how to regrain our plate by using a difference mat between the comp and the degrained plate to tell us where to regrain. And so anywhere that's in black is going to be using the original plate grain, and anything in white is going to be using the replaced DOS grain. And we can use the scatter feature in DOS grain to take the plate grain in this small area and scatter it everywhere, so we have this random pattern of original grain. And that's what's actually so effective about DOS grain, is it's actually generating new grain for you based off the grain that you've sampled, so it's going to match very closely with your original. Let's say we have some footage here of these scientists in the room, and we want to offset the timing of the scientist in the foreground. Let's grab the time machine node in the time menu, and if we make a mask between the two men, like so, anything that's in the black is going to be the original timing, and anything in the white is going to be time offset by this frames value that we have. And in the middle, where the transition is going to gradually transition from kind of one time offset extreme all the way to the original plate. And so here you can see we kind of did a split comp, but it's actually a really smooth transition. You see there, now he's looking up at the beginning of the shot. But the transition point is actually really smooth in Time Machine. That's why I like it so much. And so here we have some footage of just some smoke clouds that are kind of billowing and deforming there. And if we make a really smooth gradual ramp between one side of the image and the other, and we set the time machine to be average and set it to quite extreme, 100 frames off, you see here what it's kind of doing. And the transition point is really well hidden. And so I like to use this node sometimes for controlling effects like smoke or explosions or billows and stuff, because you can see here comparing the original with the time offset one, it's quite a smooth transition, and it is different, and you can't tell where the seam is. In the channels menu, we have channel control, which is basically a weight between each channels with a slider. So you have sliders for red, green, blue, and alpha, and it allows you to turn the channels on and off, which is good for selecting roto shapes, for example. You can also change operation between the channels. This node can also be used with an input image to pull a different key by sliding the channels around and kind of adding and subtracting different ones to get the value you're looking for. One of the most powerful features in Nuke is the ability to make channels and layers that we can make upstream and be able to pull those channels out later on. So here we have a picture of a boat that's going through some complex motion blur and projection setup. So let's say we have this boat and we want to create some individual matte channels for these windows and these lifesavers. So we can grab the Inject Matte Channel node. And what this node is going to do is it's going to allow us to create a custom name channel very easily. So if we enter a custom name like bottom windows and then click Inject New Channel, what it's doing is creating a new channel called bottomwindows.red, and it's going to turn red for us and allow us to visually see that it's created a new channel. So if we do the same and create upper windows and then another one called lifesavers, now we've injected 3 channels into the stream, and you can see that they are in fact in the viewer there, bottom windows, upper windows, and lifesavers. If we pull out a shuffle node, you'll see that we can shuffle them and that we indeed have them inside the stream. Now we can look at the bottom of the transformations and we can pull out each channel and they will have also gone through the same transformations. Well, so that allows us to, for example, make DI mats or bring the channels with us so that we can use them in the future if we need to. Here are the matte channels extracted after the transformation and just overlaid with the boat to see that they are moving together. One last note about the Inject Matte Channel node is that it works alongside Adrian Pueyo's Stamps plugin. So if you have Stamps installed, you can connect the stamp to the matte input of the node, and when you click Grab Title, it's going to intelligently grab the title from the stamp. So that'll allow you to speed up your workflow even faster if you're already working with stamps. Let's take a look at some of the color tools that are inside the Nuke Survival Toolkit. So let's say we want to sample this hectic plate here. If you go to the color menu and go to AP Color Sampler, this is using Blink script to grab the average color of the entire footage. And it's really, really fast. So let's say we don't want to grab the average color of the whole footage, but instead we want to grab just a small area. So there is an area input, which you can plug a rotoshape or any black and white matte into. And it even takes into consideration the feather of the matte or the gray value pixels, so the whiter the image, the stronger the influence is going to be. And you can see the color changing as we adjust the feather of that matte. So once you're happy with the color, you can actually bake it out. So if you click bake, it's going to run a curve tool and run through the timeline and bake the color. Once it's done baking, you can click the create button, which will create a grade node with the color in the animation of the offset. From there, we can drag the offset over to just a constant color, and now we have a constant that is flickering the same as our color sampler. The Blacks Match tool is an image-based toe operation with adjustable fall-off sliders. By default, you can choose a single color, or you can plug in the black color input to use multiple colors for your Blacks Match. So it's actually doing a toe operation based off the input color. I use this tool along with the depth pass when I'm grading CG and also when I'm applying volumetrics. Sometimes we need to apply a shadow from CG onto a live action plate, and we're rendered this colorful shadow matte pass. This is from an Arnold render, and this is supposed to be used to apply the shadow onto a plate and keep the color information. So you can use this shadow molt tool and plug in the shadow matte into the shadow matte input, and it will actually retain the color that is meant to be with the shadow. It's actually using each channel from the shadow matte as a mask to multiply that same channel. So the red channel in the shadow matte is multiplying the red channel of the image. And so you can see it's retaining the color information that way. And it comes with a few sliders for multiply and gamma just to help you apply the shadow a little bit differently, as well as a mix. There are many times where our highlights are too bright and we need to softly roll them off and bring back some detail. So you can use highlight suppress to do a sort of normalize or tone map onto the highlights. And there's a slider called limit affected area, which will help you maintain your midtones and only affect the highlights. The higher the white point slider, the more it will try to suppress the highlights. And when it's down to 1, it will be just the input image. There are also some cases where our highlights are just way too bright and they're out of range, and so we need to bring those values back down within an acceptable range, but without destroying the look of the shot. And so we kind of want it to look exactly the same while still achieving the goal of bringing those values down. And so you can use the white soft clip tool and set your maximum value so nothing will go above that value. And it should actually look pretty much the same as the original, but if you gain down the shot, you can see that it's clamping the values at a lower range than the original is. There's some controls for fall off to make it a little bit more aesthetic to how it's soft clipping, but overall it should look pretty much the same. One sort of simple tool that I use all the time is called bias saturation, and this will sort of desaturate your image towards a specific color. And by default it doesn't do it all the way, so it's still maintaining some bit of the saturation from the original image, but you can make it go fully desaturated towards that color, and then mix it into the right amount that you need. A practical example of this might be you have this sunset image and you need to shift the whole sky towards this orange color and get rid of some of that blue. So you could just sample this orangey sunset color, and now the whole sky is starting to lean more towards that color that you've sampled. And you can see if I sample the extreme saturated orange, then it's going there, and you can kind of control how much of the original you want it to maintain. The last color tool I want to mention is called Color Copy, and here we have a street and we have a color wheel, and if we use Color Copy, we can take the hue and saturation from image A and apply it to image B. So it's retaining the luminance values from the original image, and you can see we can slide around how much saturation and how much hue is mixed in, and so we're starting to get some interesting results, for example in the sky there. So if we take an actual sunset picture and just kind of blur it, so we're going to retain some of those colors. If we plug it into A now and use a mask, we can see we can get some kind of interesting results, sort of like a sky replacement where it's replacing the colors. Here's a white between the replaced sky colors that's using the hue and saturation from the sunset image and the original. We're going to take a look at a handful of tools from the filter menu. And let's say we want to glow this flame here. I tend to use AP Glow. There's a lot of other really good glow tools like Optical Glow and Glow Exponential out there, but I like the aesthetic look of AP Glow and how it falls off and how easy it is to use. It's got some basic settings for intensity and persistence, which can also be called spread or how it falls off. You can tint the color to something other than what the input color is. If you check on effect only, it's just going to be the effect and not the effect plus the input. The source black, source white, and response section is actually doing a pre-grade on the input before it glows. The node comes with a steps integer knob, which is the amount of blur nodes it's using to do the exponential blur. So you can raise or lower the steps number, and it will change the amount of blurs being used in the effect. And I want to go over the difference between the mask input and the area input. The mask input is telling the glow where to be visible after the glow has already been done on the whole image, whereas the area input is sort of masking before the glow has started, so it's telling it what area of the image should glow. So the area input has much more natural results that you would expect if you said, okay, glow this part of the image. Another quick and handy tool is the Directional Blur, which does exactly what you would think it would do. It blurs in a direction with a rotation control, and so you have the size of the blur and the rotation, as well as a perpendicular blur, which is just perpendicular to the angle you've set. You can see here it's also trying to keep the bounding box as small as possible while you're doing a large blur and rotating. There are some cases where you have a rotoshape that you're cutting a character out in, and it's leaving some unwanted edges. And there's many ways to get rid of these and many tools that help you edge extend or edge warp. Personally, I like to use AP Edge Push. And this tool is creating an edge detect distortion map, which is helping to warp the edges outwards. And by default, it doesn't do too much, so we need to increase the value, which is the power of the warp. And the softness is kind of the blur of the distortion map, the fall off is the gamma of the distortion map, and the max indent is how far inwards it's going to affect our image. By default, it's using the alpha of the input image to detect the edge in order to warp it, but you can also plug in another image in the matte input to use that alpha channel as the edge in which to warp, as you can see here. And if you unplug the matte input, it'll just go back to using the image alpha. You could also use the mask input to limit where the effect is visible. In this situation, we're warping RGBA, which means we're also warping the alpha channel, but we could set it to RGB, and so that way after the pre-mult, it appears that we're warping only within the alpha area, and that'll give us the edge extend look that we're going for while still maintaining the original alpha. One tool I've been playing around with recently is Heatwave, which makes some heat distortion effect, and it works pretty much right out of the box. And as you can see here, it's creating sort of like a hazy heat wave there. It also works if you plug in your own custom image in the custom input there. And so you can see the flames are now driving the heat wave, and it looks really awesome. And it's got settings for global amount and frequency and animation of the heat wave and all sorts of stuff. So I suggest giving it a play. One tool that I'd like to go over that you probably heard of is called AP Chroma, and I think it's very powerful and has a lot of potential. You can use the transform knobs at the top of the node or plug in your own ST map that's been manipulated to drive the chromatic aberration. In this case, we're just going to rotate and scale a little bit to get some kind of spiral effect. And if we turn the smoothness to 1, it's going to kind of interpolate smoothly in between and sample it a little bit more. We can also turn this monochrome feature up to limit the amount of aberration that it's having. But we'll reset those settings at the top for now and click Create UV Map, which is going to create a UV map that we can start manipulating. And I'm just going to grab a RotoPaint node and use the smudge brush to smudge the UV map around. And the AP Chroma is going to detect the difference from the smudge, and it's going to chromatically aberrate in the direction of the smudge strokes. You could use this, for example, to do a distortion effect onto the UV map, and then you'll essentially have a chromatically aberrated distortion effect using the AP Chroma. Let's talk about using the AP Chroma with some CG pass when you want to put it over background. So here we have a helicopter, and if we make some chromatic aberration on the helicopter using AP Chroma, if we try to over that image, you can see that the AP Chroma is not applied to the alpha channel, so it's going to be overing with the original alpha channel. And there's a reason for that. It's very difficult to chromatically aberrate an alpha channel because it's just a single channel, so how can you have multiple colors? AP Chroma tackles this by chromatically aberrating the alpha channel and saving the red, green, and blue corresponding alphas into a layer called AP Chroma. Here you can see if I pull out the AP Chroma layer that I have this chromatically aberrated alpha channel. And so AP Chroma actually comes with a suite of other tools that are helping us manage this AP Chroma layer, which is the chromatically aberrated alpha channel, so that we can do things like unpremult, premult, blur, transform, and merge over another image. And so I'm going to select AP Chroma Merge from the tool menu, and I'm going to hook it up to the A input. And this is going to give us the correct result for merging a chromatically aberrated image. The red channel is being overed using the red channel from the AP Chroma layer as an alpha, and the same with green and blue. So there's actually 3 merge operations going on, one for each channel with the corresponding alpha. And I just want to quickly demonstrate this is actually giving a different result than if you were to take the AP Chroma layer and desaturate it and try to use this as an alpha channel. Each channel, red, green, and blue, need its own alpha channel in order to merge properly because they each have their own individual amount of opacity. And so using one desaturated alpha channel overall is not going to give you the same result. And this is what I think makes the AP Chroma suite so powerful, is its management of the channels after they've already been chromatically aberrated. Let me show you one of my go-to tools for despilling, which is AP Despill. And I'm going to show you why it's become my favorite despill node. And the first thing you're going to do is choose your despill color, in this case blue, and we can see already that it's leaning towards this kind of nasty green color. So let's try to alleviate that a little bit. So we can choose our despill math between average, maximum, and minimum, and custom, which is going to be a slider between maximum and minimum, I believe. And we can actually go back to average there, and we can do our despill in log space if that's helpful. In this case, I'm going to leave it off. And the real bread and butter of this despill node comes down to this color space. If I select an item from the second menu here, I can then use the arrow keys up and down to just sort of filter through the menu items in this color space. And you have a variety of different types of color spaces that are kind of cycling through. And each one might look a little bit better or worse than another one. So you're trying to find the one that brings you closest to the color that you're trying to despill towards. And if you go over to the second menu, we can do the same thing. We have another variety of options to choose from. And so with these two variations of color space, we can get a really nice result at the start before we even have to start tweaking. What this color space section is doing a color space change before the despill and then reversing it after the despill, so sort of like a color space sandwich. And while you're cycling through the different color spaces, you're changing the ratio between each channel, which is what is giving it different results. So after we're done with the color space section, we can do some subtle tweaks to the hue offset and the tolerance. Usually you don't need to do too much. In this case, I'm just going to tweak the tolerance a little bit. And after that, you can go towards a respill color. And if it's set to 1, it's bringing the luminance back to the original plate value. But if we set it to 0 or any other color, we can start to shift the final color in a specific direction. In this case, I'm going to make it a little warmer to match this monkey's hair. And you can see we have a much better result matching the hair color than we originally started with. And I just want to give a couple more examples of how close you can get with this color space feature. So let's say we wanted to match this guy's facial color right here. So if we go through again, we check the log space and the different despill math, but the real stuff is in the color space where we go through and you can see we're able to match his skin color with just selecting the correct color space. And once again, we have this girl's hair. And we can, shift around these color spaces, and we can see we find a warmer result that matches her kind of golden hair a little bit better. There's some other features like respill math that help you bring back the respill color in a different way, as well as a mix for the node. And you can actually output the despill matte into the alpha, and the despill matte is just the difference between the final result of the despill and the original plate. The next couple of tools have to do with morphing, and they're some of my favorite tools because they're so much fun to play around with. If you go to the transform menu and you select Morph Dissolve, this is going to dissolve one image into another one. So if you plug in 0 in 1 and set some keyframes, you can basically morph one input into another input. So here I have John Travolta morphing into Nicolas Cage and vice versa in honor of the movie Face Off. So you have some settings here for vector detail and strength that have to do with the Chronos or the iDistort, and both will help you get the edges to kind of morph a little bit better with each other, so you can choose whatever works for you. One of the problems with Morph Dissolve is that you can't tell it where exactly to morph. It just morphs one whole image into another whole image. So let's say we have this picture of this girl, and then we have another picture of Emma Watson, and we want half the face to be Emma Watson and the other half the face to be the other girl. So we can make a mask with a rotoshape that has 0 and 1 and some gradient in between, and we can use the tool iMorph. And so iMorph is just like Morph Dissolve, but it has a mask input. So anywhere that's 0 is going to be the second girl, and anywhere that is 1 is going to be Emma Watson. And so we can do a little animation here and just animate this rotor shape. and we can kind of make this morph go across the face, so she's transitioning from one girl to the other girl. This node can be really heavy at times and also a little bit confusing to understand, but just think about like an eye blur or an eye transform. It's just morphing one to the other where the mask input is. And this tool can definitely be one of the more powerful and fun tools in your toolbox if you can get it to work properly. That's all the time that we have now in this webinar. There's plenty more tools that I could go over, but I tried to show as many as I could and give some practical examples. I hope you guys learned something or discovered some new tools that you're excited to try. And go ahead and give the Nuke Survival Toolkit a download and install it in your computer and see how you like it. Once again, thank you to all the people who contributed the tools from Nukepedia and all over the internet. I'm Tony Lyons, and thank you for watching.